Hey everybody, it's JJ and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite books of all time, and that of course is Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I have a very long history with Fahrenheit 451. I first read this when I was 13 years old. I am 48 now, and for the past like 6 or 7 years, every year on my birthday, August 19th, I take that day off and I read Fahrenheit 451. It's sort of become a trend, a tradition for me ever since the pandemic. You know, when I first read this novel, I honestly had no idea what I was reading. I remember it very clearly. It was a very snowy day, and my father had taken off to work. My stepmother was gone, and we were snowed in. There was not a lot I had to do. We didn't have cable TV, but we went through those periods in life where we could have it and then we couldn't have it because we couldn't afford it. And, one thing led to another, and I started rummaging through my dad's bookshelf. And of course, my dad had all sorts of novels on the bookshelf. He had a lot of the like 1980s men's adventure, post apocalyptic, World War III, Soviets are going to invade us type survivalist type books. And I loved those books growing up. And then he had, of course, the Louis Lamars, and I grew up reading Louis Lamar. And then, of course, he has some science fiction. And one of those science fiction books was Fahrenheit 451. And I read this book over a snowy weekend when I was 13 years old. And like I said, I had no idea really the depth of the story. I just thought it was interesting that here are firemen who are burning books instead of putting out fires, they're starting them. This story takes place in a near future where, there's sort of this war that's going on, but at the same time, Guy Montag is a fireman. Instead of putting out fires, firemen go around and they burn books and they start fires. And what's interesting about this is that even the history of the of what how firemen have existed has even been sort of erased and has been rewritten in many ways. This is a society where people have their walls are nothing but televisions, and they're constantly plugged in and interacting with fake media and things like that. They have seashells that they put in their ears, which in 1950 symbolizes us listening to devices all the time, whether that be something that's on TikTok or Instagram or anything like that. It's a society that really wants instant gratification, and as a result, they've pretty much stopped reading books. Books have become outlaw. To even utter the words "once upon a time" is sort of, it's an offense that you can't get away from. But when Guy Montag goes and he starts these fires, one of the fires that he starts, and there's spoilers warnings for this, by the way. Uh, one of the fires that he starts is for an old woman who quotes a book, and she pretty much lights the fire herself after they douse the entire house with kerosene, and she burns herself alive. And it's such a moving moment for him that he doesn't know what to think of it. Meanwhile, there is this young woman by the name of Clarice, who is his neighbor, and she fascinates him with just going outside and going on a walk. People don't do that in this society. They don't go out and go on a walk. I go on a walk every night and just think through brainstorming or listening to an audiobook just to de-stress. But in this society, in this world, people just don't go out and go on a walk. And so he finds it odd. And the questions that she asks about life he finds odd. But every day when he comes home from work, his eyes are drawn to this grill, the vent, where the air is coming out, and that's where he's keeping his contraband because Guy Montag has been basically taking books and storing them up there. It reached a point. I think Captain Beatty is one of the most cruelest villains because he knows the truth and yet he ignores the truth. That's for the purpose of progress, and I think that's a dangerous type of villain. And that's his. And Captain Beatty is his Guy Montag's fire captain, and Guy Montag is very well respected. As the story progresses, what we find out is that they find out that Guy has contraband, and they go on a fire call. And Guy's shocked to find out that, hey, this is my house, and the call is to my house. And so they get out to light his house on fire, and he accidentally kills his captain, and there's accidents that happen and things like that, and his captain goes up and ends up dying, and he doesn't know what to do, so he goes on the run. Now, another thing about this book is that there's a mechanical hound, and this hound is like a mechanical dog. And if you see some of the things that our military has been doing with mechanical dogs in the field and like that, stuff like that, it's kind of terrifying because it reminds you of 451, and the dog is out looking for him. And so he ends up escaping the city and meeting up with a group of people who have stored books in their minds. Now, one of the things I want to talk about with this book is a lot of people think that this is really about censorship. And for many years, probably my first 7, 8 reads, I used to think that way. Used to think that this was about censorship and about harnessing truth and propaganda and things like that. But really, it's not so much about censorship as much as it is about us as a society abandoning truth. What this story really is about our need for instant gratification. It's about our need to basically ignore the rest of the world and plug in and doom scroll all the stinking time. Bradbury saw what the television could essentially become within the future, and it frightened him. That right there, the technology and the ability to distract ourselves and the ability to not think for ourselves, that is what frightened Bradbury more than the censorship, because he knew that if we distracted ourselves within a society and we got so distracted that we would just choose to ignore truth, and truth would be rewritten and history would be rewritten without us even realizing that. This story, I think, continues to stand the test of time for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons I think is because it is so relevant to today. And I think it's a book that's going to continue to be studied at least for the next 25 to 50 years. We'll be looking back at this and thinking to ourselves, why in 2025 did we not heed the warnings that Bradbury was trying to warn us about nearly 80 years before in the 1950s? I don't really know if that's how long it was. It's this right here is the 50th anniversary edition, but it's very compelling when you think about it, how we have the warnings right in front of us as a society and we choose to ignore them. I know for a fact that me personally, sometimes I reach for my phone more than I reach for a book. And that disturbs me. That habit disturbs me. And that's what keeps me from reading more. That's what keeps me from diving into books or doing the things that I enjoy as far as reading or talking to people about the books that I've read. It's my phone, it's the instant gratification, it's that quick dopamine hit. And this book right here captures that in 1950 something, that without even understanding what an iPhone or any sort of product like that would ever become, he was seeing it within the future. And I find that extraordinarily fascinating. If you've never read Fahrenheit 451, you can tell that this is a book that I'm very passionate about. I will probably review this once a year on my channel simply because of the fact that I love it that much. And every time I pick it up, I discover something new and unique about it that I didn't even think about in the past. So there you go, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I highly recommend that. And in fact, there's a collection of stories, and one of the short stories is The Pedestrian. So if you ever get a chance to read The Pedestrian, but also go and read the Fahrenheit 451 as well, I highly recommend it. It's a great book. It's a great series of stories that all revolves around what does it mean to give up our own independence voluntarily and to stop reading as a society. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.